per our tradition, when we open the shows, we talk a little bit about TV shows. I want to think backwards a little bit, go a little bit more of some legacy television and the sitcom. And I'm thinking about this because for years, I have been trying to convince my wife to watch Superstore. It is one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. I think it's up there for me with Parks and Rec, The Office, and The Good Place. And I guess maybe Ted Lasso in my top 5. But I'd be curious, in your pantheon of favorite shows, Brandon and Ryan, what ranks in your top 3? We'll let Ryan go first.
Is this just sitcoms or shows?
I like sitcoms. I'm in a comedy mood.
Okay.
We need some laughs in the world, especially watching the Thunder.
Sure. I love Veep. Big fan of Veep.
That's a good one.
I'd say The Office for sure. That third spot would probably be between Big Bang Theory and Parks and Rec.
I got to give it to Parks and Rec. I'm going to break that tie for you. Brandon?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat. For me, The Office is probably my favorite all time, and Parks and Rec is also right there. But to switch, I'm going to add Schitt's Creek. I liked a lot, but
yeah.
But I need to add an old school. I love so many old school sitcoms like Cheers and Married with Children, and there's so many, Fresh Prince. But my favorite all time old school sitcom, Family Ties, with Michael J. Fox as Alex P. Keaton, and it still holds up. I've rewatched the whole thing in the last well, it's gonna make it seem recent, but it's 10 years ago that I rewatched the whole thing. So I guess I need to rewatch it every decade to make sure it still holds up. But it's a great show.
Yeah, you really are dating yourself and aging yourself there. First,
yeah, edit that out. Edit that out. We'll just go Office, Parks and Rec, and Schitt's Creek.
Welcome back to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me, as always, is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar, and we are joined this week as well by Ryan Woods. Brandon, Ryan, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to Thunder Jazz tonight to see the Thunder bounce back. It's going to happen. If there's any team that's going to give you a bounce back win, it's going to be the Utah Jazz, specifically against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Thunder want to win, and the Jazz want to give away a win.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I was under the impression it's the off season. I thought it was over. Brandon's saying there's more games, so we'll see.
I think there's a game tonight. I just confirmed there is one on the schedule. The Thunder are currently 17.5-point favorites. And I guess one benefit to the struggling Thunder, Brandon, to your point, is the Jazz don't want wins because they don't want to give the Thunder a draft pick. So we'll see. Or actually, correction, if they do win, they help give the Thunder a draft pick. But they want the highest draft pick they can get. So maybe there's some reason for optimism. But we have to talk about what happened. So the last time we had a podcast, the Thunder were on a 2-game win streak. They had maybe a soft kind of part of their schedule because they had just beaten the Sixers and the Hawks. They were playing Portland, the Warriors, the Suns, and Charlotte over the next week. And they got it off started well by just drubbing the Trailblazers on New Year's Eve, a very Thunder tradition to host and win on New Year's Eve. And then they traveled to San Francisco and Oakland to play the Warriors and just took apart the Warriors, who were without Curry, Draymond, and Butler, but still just a dominating 36-point or 37-point win over the Warriors. And then the Phoenix game happened, and it was a close loss, 108-105, some crunch times mistakes and some shots that you would expect SGA to hit in the clutch. He just didn't hit. And Devin Booker hit an incredible long-range three-pointer, well contested by Caruso for Phoenix to steal that one. And then Monday happened with the Charlotte Hornets. I repeat, the Charlotte Hornets just taking apart the Thunder themselves with a 27-point win that was actually not even that close at points. So we have to start, and we're going to spend this podcast talking about, is there something wrong with the Thunder? We'll just ask that question first, and then we'll get into the details. Brandon, is there something wrong with the Thunder?
Oh, I mean, something wrong with the Thunder. I think two things can be true. I think the Thunder are struggling at the moment, and they are not playing their best basketball at the moment, and there are certain flaws with the Thunder at the moment, specifically three-point shooting. J-Dub is not himself. I would say there's this lull in the season. I think they're getting every team's best shot every night. They definitely had like the target on the back. Everybody wants to take down the champs. Shea had the very incredibly rare, don't even know if I ever remember it happening, 2 games in a row where he had an off night. That just doesn't happen. A lot of games and a tight schedule. So yeah, I think that there are some things you can point to, absolutely. On the flip side of that, the other thing that is true is I still think this is the best team in the NBA, not just because they have the best record and because they are the defending champs. If you look around the league, for instance, since the Spurs, the number 2 seed in the West, beat the Thunder on Christmas Day, the Spurs are 2-4 since Christmas Day. They have been struggling as well, and they're kind of perceived as, along with the Nuggets, the biggest threat to the Thunder in the West and probably the NBA. And they lost to tonight's Utah Jazz team. They've lost to some other not so great teams as well. This is just kind of the NBA in 2025, 2026. So yes, there are some things we can point to. The Thunder are not playing their best basketball, but also overall big picture zoom out. I think the Thunder are going to be just fine.
Ryan, what's your assessment?
I do think big picture, they're going to be fine. I do think there are several reasons for why we're seeing what we're seeing right now, that are more products of kind of where in the schedule we're at, how many games these guys have logged over the last, 12 months. They feel, to me, they seem pretty gassed, not just from this season, but just from a carryover of playing into June and starting the year off 24-1. That first Spurs loss seemed to really, not necessarily because of that one individual game, but like it seemed like whenever that lengthy winning streak came to an end, it just took the wind out of their sails, and they haven't been, playing at the level we're used to seeing. And to me, it feels like they're pretty gassed. And this is the time that a lot of teams are, showing fatigue. A lot of teams around the league are very banged up right now. The Thunder being one of them. I mean, we should at least, level set in this discussion that Hardenstein's been out for a few games now. Jay Will's missed, I think tonight would be number 10 in a row. He's just, when I think about those end of the first quarter minutes with Shea, when they take J-Dub off the floor, when they take Chet off the floor, those are the minutes that Jay Will's just so effective as a release valve for Shea, stuff like that. So I think there's a combination of things for while we're seeing them look like they are right now, and I think there are some that are more concerning than others. But yeah, I agree with Brandon that big picture, I think they're fine, but I'm more than happy to get into the nitty gritty of why it looks pretty ugly right now.
Yeah, it's definitely ugly. I mean, and I put this in the recap. To me, it shouldn't happen that the Charlotte Hornets can walk into the Paycom Center and beat the defending champions by 27 points. To me, that shouldn't happen unless there is something off about the team. And I think the core question is, and I think the way that we'll break down some of the issues is I'm going to give you a statement and you guys are going to tell me if you agree or disagree, true or false. And then you can explain your thought process on that. But I'm going to start with staying the big picture here. True or false? The Thunder are broken right now. Ryan?
False. Oh, sorry.
No, Brandon, you're excited, but go ahead, Brandon.
No, false. This is definite like recency bias, like knee jerk reaction. Like I get it. It does not feel good in the moment. They're 6-6 in their last 12, 2-game losing streak, including this blowout loss to the Hornets, who, by the way, I should mention, when Knipple, Miller, Bridges, and LaMelo Ball play together, they are 9-4. And they have a 130 offensive rating when those four players play together, and a net rating of 13.8 when those four players play together. So bad loss. I don't think this team is as bad as everyone thinks it is when those four play together. But big picture, are they broken? Absolutely not. They're the defending champions with the same roster, except you added AJ Mitchell basically to the lineup. No, big picture, they are not broken. Absolutely not.
Okay, Ryan, you can finally answer.
No, I totally I agree that they're not broken. Like I don't think there's even a loss like that to Charlotte. Like it's as bad as it was. I don't think that is necessarily indicative of any team being broken, losing a game like that, because it happens to every team, even the good teams. I did find it's interesting that the Thunder hasn't lost like a 20-point game to a team, under 500 in years. I don't think it's hyperbole saying that's the worst Thunder game since they drafted Chet. I think that's the worst loss. Just in that the team they were playing was, it's a lottery team from the East. Even a lottery team from the West, you would be a more admirable loss. That was a putrid performance from start to finish. Like they got beat immediately, and didn't really show much fight. So I don't even mind the question. Like, if the Thunder's broken, it's because there's something in the locker room we don't know about yet. And that's going to prolong and be there the rest of the year, and then the team will fizzle out. If that's where this is headed, which I don't think it is, then yeah, currently they are. But barring that, which feels very extreme, I don't think they're broken. I think they're going to be just fine, and they're going to look, they're going to look themselves in time. But yeah, I get the angst and the concern and the worry about him right now.
All right, next, true or false? The Thunder are actually fine, and this is just shots not falling. And if the shots were falling, we'd be talking about something completely different. True or false? We'll let Brandon, you go first on that one.
This one's harder because I do think it's more than just that. True to the first part, big picture, the Thunder are fine. False, that it's just shots not falling down. So I guess overall I will say false because I do think there is more to it than that. The defense isn't what we are used to. And I think that's one of the biggest things when you look at it. I do agree. Ryan mentioned earlier, it should be said, Alex Caruso has missed some games recently. Isaiah Hartenstein definitely makes a big difference. But this team, they say it all the time. They say we hang our hat on defense. It all starts with defense leading to offense. And it's true. They turn the ball over. They get transition offense. Their transition offense is so much better than the half-court offense. And it just leads to these big blow-ups and these avalanches that we're used to seeing. All the comparisons to those 2010s Warriors teams, it was because they would go on these runs where they'd be unstoppable, and it started with their three-point shooting. With this Thunder team, it's the same thing. It starts with defense and turning the ball over, and we haven't seen that same defense. These last couple weeks, I guess I would say, during the stretch, we've seen it in flashes, but we haven't seen it long-term sustained like we're used to seeing. And I do think that some of that, I think Ryan made a good point earlier. When they were 24-1, all the hype, all the buzz about this team possibly breaking the all-time wins record, and then they lose a couple. And I think maybe you lose some of that steam, some of that motivation, some of that focus, because, like one of those things, one of the carrots has been taken away. It kind of felt like maybe. And championship hangover, I'm not saying it's a championship hangover, but some of that, intense focus and effort and intensity during this part of the season, during this jam-packed schedule, during a game against the Hornets on the second night of a back-to-back on a Monday night, I think maybe that's more the reason. Shots falling, definitely a part of it, though, as well.
Yeah, I do. Shots falling is a big thing. I think a lot of their shooting struggles right now is tired legs. We'll go back to I think they're a bit gassed. But yeah, to the question, I would say that I do think they're fine. But I like Brandon. I don't think it's just teams shooting well. I do want to mention that we're probably a little spoiled talking about the defense. They're still the second best defense over the last over this 6-6 stretch. They still have the second best defensive rating in the league, and we do see what happens when this defensive scheme and what makes it so good, with just the tiniest bit of down gearing from the team, how different it can look, and at times how bad it can look. And when, if they're going to if they're not going to play at their peak level of effort and physicality, all it takes is a team or a couple teams having a Jordan Goodwin hit 8 threes, or the Hornets seemingly, Brandon, it seemed like they made 70% of the threes they took the other night.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much for the defense to suddenly look like it's cratered. And I think that a lot of these perimeter guys would be it felt like an 8 out of 10 effort from us tonight, or a 7 out of 10 effort from us. And that's going to, when the scheme is the scheme, and it is the scheme, it's really difficult to be effective and not be when we're not playing at 100%. So it feels like a bit of a just that they've lost a little bit of that edge, that physicality and speed to the defense, where they are throwing the punches on that end and not just kind of chasing the ball around and hoping for misses. The turnovers have got to, they've got to start forcing more turnovers. They've got to stop turning the ball over. They've got to start rebounding the ball again. Chet talked about that the other night. They got crushed on the boards in the Phoenix game and the Charlotte game. They've got to be better at that, or they're not. If they're just going to, I think at one point Charlotte's offensive rebound rate was over 50% this was in the second half. It had touched over 50, and you're going to get slaughtered by anyone if you're going to let a team rebound that many of their misses. And on the rare time that they do miss shots, you're going to let them regather and find another look. That's going to be a long night for anyone.
Well, based upon this discussion, I'm going to pivot real quick and ask, if you had to identify who is more to blame for the struggles, the offense or the defense, what's your answer, Ryan?
I think the numbers would shout offense. I think there are pockets of these games, very winnable games, that you would point to defense. I would say offense overall. And this is where I'll bring up J-Dub. I think the offense has really struggled trying to bring him back into the mix, and him just not being himself yet and still figuring out the shot, but also just getting back into shape, getting his speed back, getting his handle back. Those things, I just didn't think the handle would be. I never considered it would be an issue when he returned, but it has really been an issue. He's just dribbling into turnovers right now and dribbling into bad shots, dribbling out the clock, not really being able to get past his man in one-on-one situations. And, regardless of whose name it is on the back of the jersey, that kind of player is the exact opposite of what the Thunder are trying to put on the floor. Someone who can't beat a closeout, someone who only takes contested mid-range shots, whether they go in or not, and someone who the ball sticks to. And that's where we're at right now. He's the last couple years, it has been so important to the Thunder, especially the starting unit, that he shoots threes and makes threes. They were hounding him last year going into the season of getting those attempts up from three, and he did. He had a really good shooting season last year from all three levels, but certainly that 3-point shot was a weapon for the team. And he's just not. He's not even taking them right now at the rate you would want. So yeah, it's a struggle on offense, especially in the half court. I think J-Dub is a big part of that. I think Hartenstein not being out there has really it's really enhanced or just magnified all of those issues with J-Dub, because I think Hartenstein's screening and just his hub at the top of the key is so important to J-Dub. That's where we find those two connecting back door a lot, finding easy stuff. So I'm not too worried long term with J-Dub. It's concerning though. It's not good right now, and I think I've asked around, it does. I've been told he's not dealing with a ton of pain, but it's more a range of motion thing that he's getting used to. Brandon, I don't know if I would have rather heard, yeah, he's still in pain, it'll be okay, or if I would have rather heard he's still getting used to a new version of his wrist, just a new normal, seems even worse to me than the pain in his wrist. So he's got a lot of time here to figure it all out before the playoffs. But I think the offense, this is a long answer, but I think the offensive side of the ball has been the bigger concern, the more sustained concern. And a lot of it's in the half court, like Brandon said, because they're not forcing turnovers, so they're sitting in the half court a lot more. And J-Dub has just really, really hurt them. And they're missing a ton of threes. They're missing a ton of shots. So, yeah, I think the offense is probably the bigger concern.
And Brandon, before you answer, Ryan, you're stealing some of my true-false statements, but that's okay. But so we'll get to, I think, J-Dub, and I'll go ahead and skip to that next. But Brandon, I'll give you the chance to answer. If you were to identify the main culprit of the struggles, is it the offense or the defense?
Yeah, I would agree it's the offense when you just look at the numbers, especially the 3-point shooting. I know we'll get to J-Dub, so I'll wait for that part. But the defense, I will say this about the defense. This team wins so much off of defense. So even if they're playing 8 out of 10 defense, it's a totally different team than when they're playing 10 out of 10 defense. And it's hard to play 10 out of 10 defense. And Ryan said we're spoiled earlier by this defense. And I agree with that. I think we're spoiled by the whole team, to be quite honest, because they still have the best record in the NBA and they're still the defending champs. But that's a whole other thing. I just do think, though, that even though the offense would be the bigger culprit, because of the shooting numbers. I do think that if this team was playing the defense they're capable of, and it's hard to hold against them because, again, 82-game season, the long season they had last year, the shorter off season, this jam-packed schedule, it's hard to blame them for not bringing it 10 out of 10 every single night like we're accustomed to. So if they're bringing it 8 out of 10, that's still, better than most teams most nights. But it's just a different team when this team is playing that sort of defense. So I would say overall offense, but with a caveat, if the defense was playing, if they're the number one defense over the stretch instead of number two, I think a lot of these are wins, even with the offensive struggles.
That is such a good point. Like basically everything we've said so far could be bottled up into what Brandon just said. Like, that is the difference between 1 and 2 is the difference in, it doesn't sound like a lot. It is the difference in wins and losses for this team specifically. It is how they are built to play. And if they don't hit that peak, it brings so many other variables into play, and it also exposes some of their built-in weaknesses and it brings into, John, your two least favorite words in shooting variance. Like, it brings those things into play when the Thunder don't peak defensively, like Brandon just said. That's a great point, because I do think the offense is the bigger issue. But we've seen them shoot poorly and win a title. Like, they were the 15th out of 16th team in 3-point shooting in the playoffs last year, and they won the whole thing. They only lost 7 games in the playoffs. So it goes back to the defense ultimately. So I'm glad Brandon mentioned that, because that is a great point.
And I think that was that was showcased by the loss to the Suns versus the loss to the Hornets, because that loss to the Suns, there were various points in the game when Phoenix was starved for points. They could not score, and I think the defense was very good. And despite the Thunder struggling offensively themselves, they were in that game, right? They probably are a typical Shea fourth quarter away from winning that. The Charlotte game was completely different. The defense intensity never was there. They never did create those opportunities to overcome the offensive struggles, and they got blown out as a result. So those are the margins. To me, you can see a big difference when the defense is on, because when the Thunder are playing good defense, they're starving their opponents for points, and they have those games like they did against the Suns, 7, 8, 9 times out of 10. 7, 8, 9 times out of 10. They're going to win those games because they have the best player on the court, and that's Shea. And you can live with results like that and chalk it up to a rough night shooting. The Thunder will come back stronger. But the alarm bells really started to ring after that Hornets game. But we'll let Brandon talk about J-Dub. And my next true false is the reason the Thunder are struggling is because they are struggling to reintegrate Jalen Williams, and J-Dub is struggling to get integrated into the team. True or false?
I will say false, because I think it's a big sweeping statement when there's more going on than just J-Dub. But I would say that those singular statements are true. Like, J-Dub is not fully himself yet. As Ryan covered, he's basically reworking his shot and basically on the fly, just trying to figure out how to play with this wrist that is obviously bothering him. And we've still seen flashes of the all-star, all-NBA, all-defense J-Dub, but it's not there consistently every single night. So I think that those statements are true, but I think the overall point is false, because I think there's more to it than just J-Dub. Like, I absolutely don't think like J-Dub should be the scapegoat and people blame J-Dub because the record before he came back versus the record when he's been back. Also, I want to say this. I think J-Dub should be granted the utmost amount of leeway, grace, time to recover, deal with the struggles throughout the season, however long it takes. If he has 10, 5 out of 17 shooting nights, this dude sacrificed, his right wrist, put off the surgery to bring home a title for this team. Like, and if he were to get that surgery and he was out of the playoffs, the Thunder absolutely do not win the title. He gets 40 points in a finals game. He had that huge shot in the Denver game 5. He was the Thunder's second best player on a team that won the title throughout the playoffs. So he has been struggling. He is not himself. I do think there has been flashes of him being himself, but I would just urge, like, try, even if you see him struggle shooting at times, just remember this dude was out there playing with a torn ligament in his shooting wrist. It was getting shot up, to for the pain and all those things. Like, every night before a game, he's still icing it during breaks and on the bench. He is clearly not fully there, but he's doing all he can to help this team win.
Ryan, what's your vote? True or false?
I'm with. If the question is all of this because of J-Dub struggling, I would say no. Like Brandon said, there's so many things going on, so many things happening right now that are factors for why they're 6-6 over the last 12. But I do think J-Dub's near the top of the list because he has struggled. I don't think the numbers say it's as bad as the eye test would say, but he's still, it's still a chore on a lot of these half-court possessions in the offense. I don't even think his defense has been bad either. I think he's shown, several stretches of defense that are like, yeah, that's J-Dub, and that's the guy that can be this team's best defender on any given night. So I think it's more just the wrist and his just him working back in. But I wouldn't say it's all on him by any means.
All right, next one. True or false, Ryan? This Thunder offense over relies on Shea and does not have a consistent offensive scheme outside of SGA.
I think the scheme. I think there is plenty to this offense. I don't think it's some remedial thing that they trot out there. Is it over reliant on Shea? I think every basketball coach in the world would sign up to coach this team with the intent to rely heavily on Shea because he's the best guard on the planet. And so yeah, I think most would say you're silly not to approach the line of maybe we're putting too much on his plate, because Shea can take a lot of responsibility for why this team is so incredible. And I think there's plenty to this offense aside from Shea. I think there's a lot of things that work well for Shea when Shea's not on the ball. I think Shea does a lot for this offense when he's not on the ball. Shout out AJ Mitchell. And shout out to J-Dub when he's fully healthy. So yes, I think this team relies a ton on two, but I think that's for good reason and to good results. But I think there's a lot more to this team's offensive identity than just give the ball to Shea. And I think Mark would, obviously say the same. This team has a lot more sophistication than that.
Brandon?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say false. Obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is probably the best scorer in the game right now. He's a generational scorer. To be able to score 30, 32 points a night on the efficiency that he does, I mean, you would want to rely on Shai's scoring, especially when J-Dub is at full health, the efficient volume scorer that he is as well. And then Chet, we've seen what he can do offensively, being like a near 40% three-point shooter as a 7'1" guy, averaging 18 points a night. So when healthy, when firing on cylinders like they are envisioned to, you have a generational scorer. You have two very good, secondary and third options. And then you have guys like AJ Mitchell. You have a shooter like Isaiah Joe. You have all these role players, 3-and-D guys like Lou Dort and Alex Caruso. Hartenstein, when he's out there, I think is a big part of the offense that's being missed with his screens, the space that he gives for Shea and Dub on those screens. And then, his passing from the post and his offensive rebounds. I think that, you think of Hartenstein, I think you're just thinking, oh, you're missing that defense and rebounding. But I think offensively, they're missing Hart as well. So I think when you add all those elements into it, they're relying on Shea about as much as they should be relying on Shea. And it's worked to win a championship. It's worked to win 68 games. It's worked to win 57 games the year prior when everybody was even younger. And it's working right now to, a trajectory for 60 games and the number one seed again. So I think it's fine. I would say they do rely on Shea Gilgeous-Alexander a lot. But if you have a Shea, if you have a Jokic, if you have a prime KD or LeBron or Steph Curry, you're going to rely on those guys a lot because they are generational guys.
All right. And you mentioned Hart, so that's the next true false. Brandon, we'll start with you on this one. True or false, the Thunder just aren't an elite team without Isaiah Hartenstein and to some degree, Jalen Williams, J. Will adding depth in the interior. True or false?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That might be the hardest one yet. I think that they are, I would say, I guess if I had to give an answer, I would say false, because I do think they are still an elite team without Hartenstein, but I don't think that they are like this 68 win team / juggernaut team without Hartenstein. I think they can still be the best team in 2026 without Hartenstein. I don't think that they can be like the hands down favorite to win the title, expect them to roll through the playoffs and be a juggernaut without Hartenstein. I think he means that much to the team. Obviously just missing the size, the rebounding, the defense, and then, like I just said, all the things that it brings offensively. I think Hartenstein has been the Thunder's third best player this season. I think it's been Shea and then Chet and then Hartenstein. And so if you're missing your third best player, and again, caveat, J-Dub is not fully healthy. If he was, he would be absolutely a top 3 player, second or third best player behind Shea. But so far this season, Hartenstein has absolutely been, I think, the third best player. You're missing that guy, and that hurts. And that's been a part of the struggle, I think, as well.
Ryan, what's your vote?
I would say the question is, can they be an elite team without Isaiah? Is that correct?
True or false, the Thunder are not, is that what I said? The Thunder are not an elite team without Hartenstein.
Yeah, I'd say false. The best 5-man unit in the league right now is a Thunder unit that doesn't include him. And that's the starting unit with Kaysen in his place. And shout out to Jada being a part of it. With everything we've said about him, he's a part of the best 5-man unit net rating wise in the league. But Chet is so good at the 5, and I think that's still where this team's best punch is him at the 5. I think this team would be the 1 seed in the West if Isaiah Hartenstein wasn't on the team. I don't think they can win 4 playoff rounds without him. Assuming that no one is in his place. It's assuming that you just remove him from this team and replace him with no one. This team is not winning a title without him. But yes, elite, top of the West without him, I absolutely think they could rattle off 60 plus wins and comfortably be the 1 seed with just Chet at the 5.
Yeah, and I wrote this one for me a little bit because I did want to talk about Hartenstein and what he brings, and I guess to a lesser extent J. Will as well, because I might lean more towards the true side of this. Brandon, you hit on all the things that Hartenstein does. There's not just one element to his game that makes the Thunder better. It's his rebounding. It's the way that he, makes sure that on the defensive boards, the Thunder are not getting canceled out by offensive rebounds. I think he's one of the best at offensive rebounds on the other side of the ball. His screening is such a critical part of the offense. He's the best screener the Thunder have, and not having him really does put a crimp on the offense. His little push shot there is a release valve for Shea when Shea is driving into the paint and they're collapsing on him. And so he's not forced to go out to 3-point shooters. He also has Hart that he can dump it off to for that little push shot. So all those things that are missing with Hart out, I think it's really starting to compound for the Thunder. And I think it is showing some deficiencies when you don't have a versatile big like him in the lineup. And his skill set is just very different than Chet's. And that's not any kind of knock on Chet, because Chet has been an all-star this season and has been playing at a very high level, especially defensively, but also being more aggressive on the offensive side of the ball. And then J. Will does a lot of the same things. He's not as good as Hartenstein, for just being candid about it, but great screener, always has himself in the right position, does a great job boxing out, getting rebounds for himself or for others. And both those guys being out at the same time, it hurts. And I think it is really hurting the Thunder, and they're having to overcome those guys being out in different ways. And I think it's starting to wear on the team a little bit. So that's my take. I really wanted to give it up to Hart. I think he's one of my favorite players. And Brandon, to your point, I agree. He's been third best player on the team so far this season. And J-Dub still has a lot of season to retake the crown as a member of the Thunder's big three. But boy, I truly miss Hartenstein right now.
And John, really quick on Hartenstein. I remember the season, the 23-24 season. Remember there was so much talk at the deadline about the Thunder need a big. Why aren't they, being aggressive, trying to trade for another big? And it's just funny to look back on those talks. Like, there was no one available that year that fit what the Thunder wanted to do. And they probably would have admitted, like, yeah, we'd love a big, but there's just no one available that we're going to play, and that doesn't totally take us out of our identity. And then to see them be that aggressive and to pay Hartenstein that much, like, it just shows how much they think of him and how much they value him. He is an amazing player. Like you're saying, all those things you just mentioned, is screening, rebounding, passing. It is so vital to this team, reaching their goals.
And you mentioned trades, so that's the next one. True or false, Ryan, the Thunder should make a deadline trade?
Oh boy, Brandon, how long do we have? What time's tip off? The correct answer is they don't need to. This team is the number one seed in the West, the defending champs. I'm just gonna plant my flag that, like, there are improvements this team can make. I do not expect them to be aggressive. I don't expect them to shake this thing up unnecessarily in their mind. But I do think that there are ways to improve this team via trade, and I would love to see them do it.
All right, Brandon, what's your answer?
I don't think the Thunder are going to make some sort of big trade. If the Thunder make a trade, I think that it's going to be along the lines of Ousmane Dieng going to a rebuilding type team where he can get some minutes, and the Thunder either free up a space to give Brandon Carlson or Brooks Barnhizer a standard deal, or maybe they get a rotation player back. Maybe they include an asset with Dieng and get either, some big depth or a shooter, but I don't think it'll be along the lines of like a Trey Murphy or anything like that, but maybe a guy that can make the rotation and either help with the shooting or with the size. I would say it'll be something like that. I don't think it'll be some, monumental trade.
No, that wasn't the question. Though, so let me clarify that should the Thunder make a trade?
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
John,
you have to give your opinion here.
John, you've given us this is just what we talk about offline all the time. So forgive us. We spend a lot of our time talking about this question.
I will say, yes, they should. They should trade Ousmane Dieng to a rebuilding team where he can get some minutes, and they give back a small rotation player that can help us size or shooting, or give a standard deal to Brandon Carlson or Brooks Barnheiser.
Oh, well said, Brandon.
He's so good. He's so good at this, John.
Yeah. So I pay the big bucks. So the last true false question, and in the interest of time, in the interest for hot takes, I'm going to ask you guys to keep your answers short. Ryan, I'm going to start with you again on this one. True or false? The Thunder are not as good this year as they were last year.
I'm going to say false. Shea's shooting threes at a meaningful series changing level. So I'm going to say false.
All right, Brandon, I think I can guess your answer, but go ahead.
False. This is some recency bias. Obviously, it does not feel good right now, but this is still the best team in the NBA. And I think when they're at full strength and they're fully motivated, this is still, either equal to last year's team, better than last year's team, however you want to say. You added AJ Mitchell, and like Ryan said, Shea's 3-point shooting to this team. J-Dub's not himself. If J-Dub gets back to himself, this team is at least as good as last year. I believe that.
Oh, if J-Dub gets back to his normal level, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
This team's crazy. Like adding AJ, they need, if they'll shoot as a team like 30% from the league, which is not a good number, way below league average. It's a wrap.
Yeah. All right. So, it sounds like we're not ready to burn the house down, trade everybody except SGA, and rebuild this thing from scratch. The foundation and the bones are still pretty good for the Thunder, and they're kind of going through one. But you guys, if I want to take away, still got confidence that this team has, title aspirations in front of it and is the best team in the NBA if it can figure some things out. And, it's great. We're in a situation here. We're talking about a 30-7 team. Like it's got real problems, but still 6-6 over the last 12. But the team is on a 66+ win pace at 30-7 with the best record in the NBA. And hey, if you're going to have problems, I'm okay having problems when you're 30-7. Much better than when you're 14-23 like the Mavs.
That's exactly right. One last thing I'd like to say, I think that there's only been 3 bad losses this year. When you zoom out and look at it, I don't think that first loss to Portland was a bad loss at all. Half the roster was out. It was the third game in 4 nights. I don't think that loss to the Wolves was a bad loss. It was a very close game on the road against a team that's been to 2 Western Conference Finals in a row. I don't think that loss to the Suns was a bad loss. It was a crazy, impressive Devin Booker 35-footer away from going to overtime on the road against a good team. And I don't think that NBA Cup loss to the Spurs was a bad loss. It was 2 points against the second best team in the NBA right now on a neutral site that really became a road game because everybody's cheering for the underdog Spurs to win. So I think you're looking at those 2 games against the Spurs, 23rd and 25th, and then this Hornets loss. I think those are the only 3 bad losses on the season, and 2 of those were against a really good team in this stretch. And then, the Hornets, there's 100 different ways that we could explain it, but overall, I think you're looking at this body of work so far, 3 bad losses. That's not so bad.
And I think we can all agree, like if they play like they played against the Hornets, like they're not going to win anything.
Right.
They would, like it really is like, it was startling and like weird, but I don't think like the questions we're answering, like I don't even know that the Hornets game is even applicable for like the team we saw that night is not the Thunder.
Exactly.
It's not the team that played against all these other teams, other games where they lost. Like that's a totally different team, and they would certainly admit that.
Well, with the few minutes we have remaining, let's look ahead at the schedule for the following week. So by the time we talk again, the Thunder will have played Utah, Memphis on the road, the Heat, and the dreaded Spurs again. Brandon, for those 4 games, give us your prediction. The Thunder go 4-0, 3-1, 2-2, 0-4. What are your thoughts?
I will say 3-1. I will say they're going to win against the Jazz tonight. And I will say, I'm going to go ahead and say it, I think they beat the Spurs. I do not see this team losing 4 games to the same team in this short stretch. They should beat the Grizzlies. They're better than the Heat, but I'll cook in. I think it would be, silly for me to say they're going to go 4-0 after the stretch that they've been through. So I say they'll drop one in there somewhere and they end up 3-1.
What's your prediction, Ryan?
I'll say the same. I actually think the Heat game is the one they drop on what day is that? Is that the 11th? You know what? I think they go 4-0. That Heat game's at home. I think they go 4-0 because I do think the Spurs game they're going to win, and I think they'll beat the Heat at home. So
I cannot believe I've been out sunshine pumped. What is happening?
I know.
I was about to say the same thing. I can't believe I went with a better record. I could be, we could be dead wrong. They could go 1-3 with how they're playing right now. But I'll say they win them all. You know what? I'm not driving.
I like the optimism, and hey, if Brandon is the one saying 3-1, maybe things are better than we think, right? Better than it feels right now. Thunder do have some things to work on, and everything isn't roses. But again, as I had said, this is still a 30-7 team with the best record in the NBA, and an elite coach in Mark Dagnall and elite players. So I got all the confidence in the world they'll figure it out. But if they're still struggling, people can keep tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast for all of the insights. And if any of the coaching staff needs some help at sussing out the issues and getting the team back on track, just give us a call. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast. And today we have Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer, and Ryan Woods. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcast. And we'll be back in your feed soon.